for the last session of the day. We will have a conversation on the interconnected world of Bitcoin, blockchain, and the broader spectrum of security and sustainability, and how many consumers are misinformed on the full ability of digital currency. Now, please welcome here on stage Perianne Boring, Chamber of Digital Commerce, and Michael Casey from CoinDesk. Please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Casey. I'm the Chief Content Officer at CoinDesk. We cover the crypto, digital assets, blockchain world, and I'm very pleased to be sitting here with Perianne. We've been covering this stuff for a long time together, 9 years of the wild ups and downs and the rides of this interesting technology. We thought we'd just, maybe flip the switch a little bit in the conversation here, right? Everyone is often hears, I think, about the large consumption of energy that Bitcoin supposedly represents, and it sort of becomes this almost, it freezes the conversation. People sort of see these large numbers as if, Bitcoin consumes as much energy as Argentina, but sort of like it gets frozen in this. Well, what does that mean? Like, what's its value? What isn't it? Right? I mean, until we have a conversation about what Bitcoin could be as a significant kind of systems effect on managing energy crises, you kind of almost have to start talking about why is it valuable?
Why does Bitcoin matter? Why would we put energy and resources behind this thing that you can't even see or touch?
Right.
So, and it was maybe 2 years ago, I was out to dinner with some friends, and the waitress at our restaurant, we were talking about Bitcoin, of course, because that's my favorite topic.
That's what you talk about.
And the waitress was like, "Oh yeah, Bitcoin, all the energy usage, it's a problem." And that's kind of where the light bulb went off for me of like, if we don't take control of this conversation, this is going to be a big problem for this technology area. So I think you asked the right question, and why is this technology important? Why would we devote energy and resources towards this, towards Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain? And sometimes I feel like in the United States, it's hard for just average Americans to really understand why this digital currency system is needed, because we benefit from living in the most prosperous country in the world, and most of us really don't have a challenge getting access to financial services, although it's not perfect by any means. But if you need a bank account or if you need credit, there's a lot of resources out there. That is not the case everywhere. And I just wanted to tell a story about a woman that I actually met here in New York several years ago. She's from Afghanistan, and she started a school for women to help them become independent, financially independent, and just independent in life. In Afghanistan, women are not allowed to have bank accounts without a man's signatory. So part of what they did at this school is they teach women all sorts of skills, particularly computer skills, and then they help get them jobs. So their students now have jobs. They're doing a lot of software development, and then paying them, getting them compensated was a big problem, because these women, these girls, they needed bank accounts. It's a whole ordeal to get them. She learned about Bitcoin in 2013 and just said, you know what, we might as well just try this, because everything we try is very complicated. Long story short, many, many years have gone by. Caveat, Bitcoin has been the best performing asset 12 out of the last 14 years. So anybody that got any amount of Bitcoin in 2013 is sitting pretty right now. So some of these women who had received Bitcoin as compensation and had saved some of it ended up having real appreciation of money over time. Fast forward to recent years, where everyone's aware of the challenges in Afghanistan. Now a lot of these women are targets because they're a part of a school that is to teach women, and that's just not kind of commensurate with the Taliban's agenda. Some of these women were targeted and had to be evacuated in a military operation just to get them to safety. They became immigrants, and a lot of them are living here in the United States now. They came here as immigrants with nothing except their Bitcoin, because it's digital. All you need is your passcode. And there's not a lot of stories of immigrants in the world that had to leave under this type of an emergency that get to their new place and they could take their money with them, and they had enough to where they're not on the dole or they're not having to use government resources just to survive. So for me, just as a woman who's met other women around the world, at least it was valuable for her, and to me, that's worth it.
Yeah. I love the story. I have a particular reason why I love it. We actually featured that story in a book I wrote many years back. And the reason why it always resonated with me, and we actually led the book with the story, was because it kind of flips the switch on things. And it makes people, it's a different way to think about why it's valuable. And yes, it is a rebellious technology, right? It breaks through systems of control, and you could either see that as a good or a bad thing. The Taliban do not think Bitcoin is a good thing, right? But if you're on the Taliban side, then you see it's a terrible idea. But if you see it, so it is a classic, one person's freedom fighter, the other one's terrorist. That's the question of its value is inherently challenging, which I think was part of the appeal. But I think the other thing to say then is, okay, when you confront somebody who's saying, oh, look how much consumption there is, and by the way, I think stats are showing that 60% of the consumption is from sustainable resources, actually one of the highest percentages of sustainable energy use is precisely because that's the cheapest form of energy that's out there. And the thing about Bitcoin is it inherently seeks out the cheapest energy because it's an economic equation that it's constantly battling for. But if you go through that debate, you still just end, whether you sit on the pro or the con side of Bitcoin, you can still just recognize that it doesn't matter. There really is demand for it. And then the question becomes, what do you do with that demand, right? Because the demand itself is valuable. And you've been looking at, ways in which, member companies that you work with, and you've got an announcement, I think, that you had today around this new consortium, how it's essentially just taking the demand for Bitcoin and using it as a way to manage renewable resources or, gas flares, for example, and emissions. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what we're seeing at the Chamber of Digital Commerce is that Bitcoin and blockchain technology is driving conversations in energy policy that really hadn't existed before. And to me, that was really exciting. And it's been an incredible past couple of years to work hand in hand with Bitcoin mining companies across the country to see how they're changing energy markets across many different types of energy sources. Today, we did announce the launch of the Digital Power Network. Our work in energy policy has really just taken off in an incredible way that we've spun it off into an affiliate, and we now have a dedicated organization that is driving energy policy and Bitcoin as a tool to advance energy security and national security goals. Specifically, the things that we're seeing that I'm excited about come down to the transition to renewables. So we are seeing Bitcoin mining create a new economic model that incentivizes additional investments in renewables. There is a huge will and a political agenda to build more infrastructure around renewable plants. We have seen new investors enter this space once you have Bitcoin mining coupled with a renewable plant. And the reason is because this is a flexible load. Bitcoin mining can power up or power down. You just push a couple buttons on a computer and you can power massive Bitcoin mining plants down in seconds without breaking infrastructure. You can't say that for any other form of energy use. So the transition to renewables is something that is incredibly important and needs to be further understood by the policy community, as well as we're seeing decarbonization programs, literally how Bitcoin miners are coming on site and cleaning up the environment. And that is also a huge benefit for energy policy and grid stabilization. There's very, very successful partnerships in a number of states around the country where Bitcoin miners have partnered with grid operators and prevented blackouts and helped stabilize the grid. So we're seeing massive benefits to energy infrastructure and energy policy, and we're excited to explore that further.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about it to me is it requires a sort of a systems way of thinking, right? Like to see, it's not like Bitcoin produces renewable energy, But Bitcoin, the demand for Bitcoin and its absolute need for energy gives this source that you can work with. And I think that's one of the things that's really interesting. Are you finding that policymakers are exploring this? Are there grid operators, for example, who are seeing this as a mechanism for managing the peak and trough problems of solar power, for example?
Absolutely. So Texas is at the forefront of this. The grid operator in Texas is called ERCOT. ERCOT has these ancillary service programs, and demand response is one of them. And Bitcoin mining companies are one of the most utilized partners, and any commercial industry can be an ERCOT partner. Anybody can sign up for it. But because the Bitcoin miners are using renewables, their prices are cheaper because they get paid to turn off by the grid operator, but they have cheaper prices and they can operate faster. So this is preventing blackouts in one of the hottest states in the country that has a lot of pressure and demand on the grid. And being able to utilize this technology to prevent blackouts is incredibly important because you either break the grid or you have to turn everybody's energy off. What if you turn the hospital off? You don't have to do that anymore because these Bitcoin mining companies will say, hey, we'll dial down so we don't have to resort to that.
Right.
And this has been so successful that the White House's Office of Science and Technology Policy studied what ERCOT's partnerships look like with Bitcoin mining companies specifically, and it made it to a White House report. These benefits have been reported to the White House and studied by the White House.
So, but we've got national security as one of the subject matters in this. We've got 1.5 minutes left, unfortunately, but just talk us through how that matters then. If you've got the White House looking at it, are policymakers looking at this? Obviously, energy security is an element of national security. So,
So there's actually a hearing tomorrow in the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and it's about how do we bring back supply chains or reduce the reliance of supply chains from China specifically, and how do we beat China as a economic competitor. One of our members that has submitted testimony for tomorrow, a company called Arudyne that's building semiconductors. These are the chips that Bitcoin miners use to mine Bitcoin. They're headquartered in the United States. They're building these chips in the United States. And part of the conversation is bringing chip manufacturing back to the United States. Today, almost 100% of ASIC chips are manufactured by Chinese companies. So Bitcoin mining is driving the demand to bring this chip manufacturing back to the United States. And they're testifying on this tomorrow. So reliance on supply chains is one piece of national security. But also, I mentioned this stat earlier, it's one of my favorite. Bitcoin's been one of the best performing assets 12 out of the past 14 years. It is in the interest of the United States for the benefits of Bitcoin to be developed, invested, and innovated on in the United States. Because in the long run, Bitcoin and blockchains, what Bitcoin runs on, is what we are going to use to transact in the global economy. This is digital infrastructure, and it should be developed here.
There you have it. That's not quite the way that the current mood in the United States is playing out, but it's great to have the case being made for it. So thank you very much, Perianne.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
This special set of programming was brought to this room and our virtual viewers with support from the Knight Foundation, Meta, the US Department of State, the Public Arena Playbook, and Merck. Thank you so much. And that's it for today and this afternoon. Thank you.